Midas, do you like eating on the floor?
No, I don't. But I will, because I have to. And I'm a dog and I'm always hungry.
Is this the kind of guy you want to have having to eat off the floor?
No.
Hi everybody, and welcome to an episode of One Hand Made. If you have not ever been on this channel before, which is likely because this is my first video, then a quick bit about myself. My name's Tim, and I have one arm, but I also love doing woodworking. So this channel and this video are devoted to just sort of chilling out and watching how I do stuff and what I can make. And today we're working on making a dog bowl tray for our family dog Midas, who is about 2 years old. You just saw him. He is so cute. So what we're starting to do is just milling our wood down, and my helper here is Cece. You'll see Cece in many videos. Now, I try not to use the jointer, if possible, on larger wood because it's really hard for me to stabilize. And so using my Festool track saw, I'm able to get a really nice starter edge, and then I'm able to mill the other side, the other edge, just using my table saw. This works for most things. Obviously, if you need a really fine work, using the jointer is helpful. Now, today's project, we are going to be cutting out circles in that piece of wood that you saw me milling. And then we'll also add some legs. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do is make a circle cutting jig for my router, because I've never actually had to cut circles before. You're going to see that in almost everything that I do, I end up using clamps for something. Just holding stuff in place, clamps are really, really helpful with one hand. Oops. You're also going to see that I do not have the right router for this job. So maybe we'll have Christmas happen or something. So a great way to find the center is just exactly what I'm doing. Just trace from corner to corner here. If you can, hold your ruler down because then you can draw darker. Screwing it on to replace the router plate. And now you'll see we cut a hole at the radius that we're after. And now we can just slowly lower the bit down and create a beautiful circle. Now, I'm not going to just cut through the wood here. My goal is to have a beautiful, continuous piece. And so I'm actually going to try to hog out all of these circles and then have a beautiful continuous grain that goes from the edge down into the bowl holder and then back up the other edge. It should look beautiful. Midas deserves the best. But my first attempt here was terrible. Look at this. Oh, you can even see it on my face a little bit there. I'm just grimacing. It's getting smoke going. So I'm not going to show you this, but I went and created another router jig that gets me from edge to edge of the circle. This worked better, though just to be clear, it's really, really hard, and I would very much recommend a plunge router as opposed to this little trim router, battery operated, if you're trying to do something like this. But I do really like this edge-to-edge guide because it lets me get much more accurate as I'm getting deeper and deeper into the circles. What's really tricky is being able to actually see once you're down about half an inch. You can hardly see in there. I don't know how I would approach this challenge in the future, but I did not end up nicking the edges, which is remarkable. And the reason I went as deep as I did is so I could then add a roundover using the edge following roundover bit. And I had enough depth in there to be able to get that bit all the way to where I wanted it. Now the first bit of the sanding, and you can see I couldn't quite get the hose attached and deep in there, so I was holding it with my stump. And now look at that wood. It's beautiful. It's really starting to come out. So there we have what we'll call the table aspect of the dog bowl table, and now we need to start figuring out the legs. So I'm going to be making a pattern, and the first thing to do is make sure the pattern is square. And now I'm beginning to mark, and I'm going to draw the pattern that I want for these legs. 12 inches. And here I'm just freehanding, and you get a really good view of my sleeve. You're going to see my sleeve a lot in this video. That's just sort of the way it goes, I'm afraid. So I'm just completely freehanding that, and I'm proud of myself. Wow. You probably can't see that, but that's pretty good. That's right, it's pretty good. So I'm going to darken the line a little bit, make it more accurate and smooth. Then I use a Sharpie to make sure I have a very clear line. And it's about time to head over to the bandsaw. Now, this is the first time I'm using a bandsaw to cut a curve like this, and it did not disappoint. I will say this is a 3/8 blade, and it's too thick for this work. It's okay. I mean, I managed to make it work, but I knew that when I was going to be moving toward cutting through nearly 1 inch thick walnut, making these radiuses, I was going to need a little bit of a thinner blade. So I actually ran out to my local Woodcraft and purchased a new one for that. You'll see that coming up. At this point, I also realized I really, really wanted a oscillating spindle sander. Hello again. I bet you didn't even recognize the place. I cleaned up a little bit. All right, so what we're doing today, or right now, I don't know if it's today for you or if it's just today for me, probably just for me. You're hilarious. I'm going to be using the pattern to cut out some legs. Now, my basic idea here is that I'm going to put one there, another one there, one there, and one there. But let's remember, these have to be cut out at, there have to be these 45-degree angles so we can put them together like two pieces of continuous wood. I don't know how you're going to remember that we have to do that because I didn't explain it. So what I'm doing is I will be reversing the pattern, cutting the boards with a 45-degree on the table saw, which you'll see in a moment, and then gluing them together to make a beautiful leg. This is not exactly 1 inch thick. Oh, this is a wonderful part about me measuring. 57/64. Yeah, let's oh, good. That's easier to do with 113 1/28. Ah, math. No. 7/8. All right, so the board is 7/8 thick. 7/8 divided by 2 is 3.58, which is 7/16. You did it. Make sure that my blade is not going to cut that. It is not. So here's the 45 that I was talking about. And hopefully we're going to end up with 2 even boards. If you were really particular, you'd actually need to make these 45s opposite each other to try to get a grain match, but I am not that particular, so I did not do that. Midas is just going to have to deal. Not going to have matching grain on his leg edges. They still came out nicely, though. Holding stuff, yet again, is always a big challenge for me. But I can really use my shoulder for a lot of stuff. And now I got that beautiful line. Now, I'm going to be using that pattern to do a pattern routing, and you'll see how that happens in a moment. But what that means is that for this stage, I'm actually going to be staying to the outside of that black line so that there's a little bit of material that's left over. I've now shifted to the 1/4-inch blade that I referenced earlier, and it is indeed much smoother. I wanted to get an 1/8-inch blade, but that blade was 3 times as expensive, and I decided that is not worth it. But look at that cut. Wow. For a newbie, I think I did pretty well. Now I'm cutting out the other side, and you can see where that 45-degree angle is. So now to do the pattern routing. And step 1 is getting the pattern itself attached to the leg. So I've got some double-side sticky tape. And let me tell you, I went through a lot of trial and error getting stuff that works. You need the right thing. I ended up getting some fairly expensive tape from Woodcraft. I'm sure you can get it at your local store, but it needs to be thin. It needs to be sticky, but it also needs to come off. Now, I left this in here because you should always try to think about good ways to get tape off and on, particularly with one hand, I will admit it. Now I'm attaching the pattern, which I'm doing very carefully because you can't really move it once you get it laid out and attached. You can sneak it around a little bit, but my goal is to get the edges that are already cut lined up. And now I can bring it over to my router, which has a bearing there at the bottom. And that bearing is going to follow along the pattern, and then the blades will take off the excess wood that I didn't trim off from the bandsaw. Now, so you could really get a good view here, I did not use my dust collection, and you can see why dust collection is a good thing to have. This is probably the most satisfying aspect of this build. I love routing, and pattern routing like this was a joy. So now that I've got both of my leg pieces pattern routed, I can get ready to glue these things together to make one final leg. Only problem, my glue was not working. Let's start over. For those of you that like this kind of stuff, that was the glue.
Achoo!
Try this again. Oh, there it is. Very nice, Tim. Very nice. Now you're going to watch the painstaking process of me carefully spreading this glue all over the place and the board moving. I probably should have put a clamp on it. It would have just made my life a lot easier, and it would have gone a lot faster. And given that this is the first leg I was doing, I was being very careful. Slip slide those pieces together into my 90-degree angle clamp, which worked beautifully actually. Highly recommend getting one of these or something similar. Now, I have a sense I'm going to get a lot of comments from folks about the use of these hand clamps, these squeeze clamps. Let me just tell you, with one hand, it is so much easier. Look at how proud of myself I am. Oh, it looks great. Ooh, that is sexy. What a glue up. This was the second most satisfying part of the project. Getting to take our first look at this glued up leg, and it worked beautifully. Oh, let's see if it's flat. Ooh, wait, that's not how a leg goes. Not very stable until you put 4 of them together. All right, now to make 3 more legs. So start by doing the cutouts. I won't make you watch all of this stuff, that's for sure. But cutting out each of these legs. Look at those bandsaw skills. Woof! 2 more right there. I won't show you the 4th. I'm going to do a lot of tape, and I got a little bit smarter about the way I did this. So mass production is a good thing. I always try to do one aspect first, or one version of each of the mass-produced pieces first, just to get a sense for how it's going to go. And then I can repeat the process. Add my pattern. More routing, and this time you can see the dust collection. Oh, that's satisfying. More clamping. You can get it, Tim! Ah. And now we start to apply the roundovers to give our wood some of the more final look. You'll see this is not the end of our roundovering. Now, just to be clear, my fingers are not in any danger there for the most part, because that blade is much lower, but I try to be as careful as possible and keep my one good hand, though missing fingers, away. And when I say one good hand, I mean only hand. What I've got to do before I do the glue up and whatnot is to ensure that these bottoms of these are completely flat, that they're actually at the same height, which you can see that they're not. Once these are at the same height, each of these sides need to be completely straight, as well as the same exact length on all sides. And then the feet are all the exact same height. So, yucky. That's a technical term. So, over to the jointer. This is a good application of a jointer. I'm making a jig right now that is going to be able to hold each of those legs in the exact same spot. So the first thing to do is to square up this board. And now I'm adding a 45, and my camera work is impeccable, as you can tell. But if you have a jointer, it's likely you can set the guide to 45 like this. Well, you saw my belly, but it did that. Ran it over this thing. Took off a 16th at a time. Here, pretend I did this. I'm doing this. Nothing against craftsmen, but that is also not a good jointer. I would love an upgrade at some point, but not going to happen. This next section here, I actually left in to show you the brain of one handmade at work. So my goal is to put the piece on there and then make this a repeatable cut. And to be repeatable, it's going to have the end of it be at the same height. But most importantly, I'm going to have to figure out how to hold it, and that is not going to be the way to do it, son. Yes, yeah, that's not a good idea. Aha! I've discovered there is a lip that may be able to take a clamp that I don't have. And with the magic of editing, I have retrieved the clamp nearly instantly. Bring it back. And look at that. Like a glove. So it is now attached to my jig, and now I just have to hold my jig in place as opposed to holding the board in place. And then I can take off a shaving of the top. And I did this cut extremely slowly, so I fast forwarded for you. Then mark where that leg was so I can make it repeatable, and repeat 3 more times. You can see how that mark is helpful. Now we're going to be doing the edges of each leg. Set a stop so I can have it be the exact same on every single one, and knock out all 4 of the legs. I'm going to be attaching these legs using dowels, but you could really do anything. This is a doweling jig, and the way it stays on, there's 2 pins that when you put pressure on them, they actually put your hole right in the middle. Now, this is very easy to use with with 2 hands, or with 1 hand and a knee, and does not work well. But I did make it work. That's what we do. You can see it shaking all over the place, but the entire piece was actually shaking in the same way, so I was able to drill a nice straight hole. Now, to get your dowels lined up where you want it, you actually use these center pin things that you put into the dowel holes, and then you put it where you want. You push down, and now those dowel thingy-mabobs are making you a little mark. And then you carefully put on your reading glasses so you can see that mark, which I didn't do, which is why it took so long, and cut the remaining hole for your dowel. Beautiful. Let's do a dry fit. Look at that. I was actually extremely pleased with myself there. Felt very good. Time to add some glue. So we'll take our leg, and you can see this is actually, I think, the 4th one that I'm gluing up. Practice makes perfect. Add our dowels. You can't see it, but I'm adding glue. Normally I would just wipe that on my pants, but I have this habit of coming down and doing a little bit of work and not changing into my grubby clothes. So, more clamps. Oh, look at that squeeze out.
How's it work?
Woof, woof.
Hello, Sebastian. That is my other child. Just a little bit more to go here. Adding some more wood there to make it a seamless base, and it didn't quite fit, so you use the sander to just take off a little hair, carefully fit everything dry, then add our glue, which I smeared out. That was satisfying. Then to make it line up beautifully, just used a nice mallet, got that lined up. And then we'll clamp those and make it beautiful. So after that glue dried, it was time to do more routing. And this is another wonderful part where you're taking off the final bits of wood. And everything's going beautifully until, you can tell I'm not happy.
Well, that's super unfortunate.
Took a big hunk out of that because the stupid bearing. Lesson learned. Don't buy cheap router bits. Only very expensive ones, because it's woodworking and everything is really, really expensive. Otherwise, it breaks. Your first real look at her. So I recovered. That is a nice piece of furniture. It's Midas furniture. On to more sanding. And my router actually left a very jagged element here. I spent a lot of time sanding that out. And then we're on to finish. So in this case, I am using tung oil finish, which is not just tung oil. It has, I believe, some sort of alcohol base, so it dries in less than 4 months, which is what tung oil actually does. Go around, we're actually going to do 2 coats. About 1 day in between coats. Midas was getting very anxious during this time. He really wanted to use it, but boy, is that beautiful. This is actually before I wiped it off. It looks really nice. But it still looks really nice after wiping it off as well. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun with this project, and it looks like Midas is having a really lovely time.
Midas, how is it, buddy? Midas, is it good?
I think that means he approves. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Maybe learned a little something, zenned out, whatever you get out of the video, it's for you. So hit like, subscribe, and all those other things that I'm supposed to say at the end of a YouTube video, and I'll see you in the next One Handmade.